The Formula 1 record books are dominated by some big names with big numbers, such as Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher. But of course, there are also a small group of drivers who have got just that one win to their name. We've tried to put together a top 10 one-hit wonders list, based on the circumstances of their specific victory and their overall careers. Now, I'm not including drivers who are still active, so no Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly or Esteban Ocon, because, well, they could win a second one and take themselves off the list. So, here we go.
Gentlemen, a short view back to the past.
Number 10, Jean Alesi, the 1995 Canadian Grand Prix. Now, Alesi makes it onto this list largely because he shouldn't be on it. He should have had many more wins, really. He was a star for Tyrrell in his early days. He had several races, such as the 1994 Italian Grand Prix, where he should have won for Ferrari, but somehow it always seemed to elude him, except for this one day in Montreal. He qualified 5th, dealt with both Gerhard Berger and Damon Hill's Williams. David Coulthard was out of the race, and that meant he was running second to Michael Schumacher's dominant Benetton. When that hit gearbox trouble, Alesi finally got that win he so richly deserved. Number 9, Giancarlo Baghetti. Now, if we included non-championship F1 races, and yes, that used to be quite a big thing, Baghetti wouldn't be on this list because he actually won his first 3 F1 starts. But only one of those was a World Championship race, and it was the 1961 French Grand Prix. Now, Ferrari was the dominant force that season, and the 3 main cars qualified 1st, 2nd and 3rd in the hands of Wolfgang von Trips, Phil Hill and Richie Ginther. Baghetti was down in 12th, but he did have an older spec engine, and let's remember, it also was his World Championship debut. A high rate of attrition helped Baghetti work his way up the field, and he first hit the front on lap 41 of 52. He found himself embroiled in a fight with the 2 Porsches of Dan Gurney and Joe Bonnier. Bonnier's car hit trouble, and that left the more experienced Gurney in the less powerful Porsche against Baghetti. They were still together on the final lap, but as it was, Baghetti had more power and won on the run to the line. Baghetti won by 0.1 seconds, but he would never get anywhere near winning another World Championship race. Ferrari lost its competitiveness in 1962, Baghetti joined the atrocious ATS operation in 1963, and his career petered out after that. Number 8, Robert Kubica, 2008 Canadian Grand Prix. Now, if this list was done just on driving ability, Kubica would be number 1, because he was regarded as up there with the likes of Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton until his unfortunate rally accident in 2011, which means he's quite ridiculously on this list of one-hit wonders. Now, Kubica's F1 day of days came at Montreal. He qualified 2nd, and he was helped by Lewis Hamilton's gaffe in the Montreal pit lane where he didn't see a red light and he drove into the back of Kimi Raikkonen's Ferrari. So that was 2 of his main rivals out on the spot. But Kubica was quick that day, and on a 2-stop strategy he was also helped by his teammate Nick Heidfeld on a 1-stop strategy. Heidfeld allowed him out of the way and held up the rivals while Kubica pulled away in time for his 2nd stop, and he emerged and was able to take, or lead rather, BMW Sauber's 1-2. Now, Kubica actually took the lead of the championship at that point and was a real title contender, but BMW decided to focus on its 2009 programme, something that Kubica was pretty cross about, and of course they fell away from McLaren and Ferrari, so he wasn't able to maintain that challenge. Number 7, Olivier Panis, 1996 Monaco Grand Prix. Now, this race was one of those races that the Monaco track sometimes throws up, a chaotic, crazy, silly race with all sorts of things happening. And that's why it's not higher up this list, because Panis did require a little bit of luck to get there, most notably Damon Hill's Williams Renault blowing up when well in the lead, and Jean Alesi, yes, that man again, also going out after he had suspension problems. But to be fair to Panis, he'd worked his way up from 14th on the grid, had pulled off some overtaking manoeuvres, and he also held off David Coulthard's McLaren in the closing stages. He was genuinely quick, and it was one of those well-deserved but random victories, and it was Ligier's first win for 15 years, and of course it would be its last. Number 6, Gunnar Nielsen, 1977 Belgian Grand Prix. And Nielsen was a pretty solid number 2 at Lotus to Mario Andretti, and Lotus were a coming force during this period as they got their heads around ground effects. Mario Andretti did indeed take pole position for this race by 1.54 seconds, a pretty big margin, with Nielsen 3rd in the spare car. The race started wet, and that inevitably accounted for some of the runners, including Andretti and John Watson, and it soon dried, so lots of the field came in to change onto slick tyres, and at one stage Nielsen was down at 8th, but he was just having one of those days where he charged through the pack, and he soon got to second place. But that was second to Niki Lauda's Ferrari, and Lauda was pretty decent in the wet, and he also had a lead of nearly 20 seconds. Nielsen charged after an unhappy Lauda, wasn't happy with the handling of his car that day, and Nielsen caught him and overtook him and took a frankly remarkable Grand Prix win. Sadly, he wouldn't live for very much longer because he died of cancer. But at least that one day showed the potential that Nielsen really had. Number 5, Vittorio Brambilla, 1975 Austrian Grand Prix. Now, Brambilla was quite prone to having incidents, a little bit like someone else that's further up this list, but this is another fantastic victory, another rain-affected race. He worked his way up through the field early on, caught and passed both Niki Lauda and James Hunt, who were battling for the lead, and simply disappeared. He was 24 seconds clear in a March that didn't really usually have that sort of performance when the red flags flew due to the worsening conditions. Now, presumably, Brambilla was so surprised by this victory that he then crashed. So this race is actually most famous for him crashing after winning. But actually, that shouldn't detract from a truly superb performance prior to that moment. Number 4, Jarno Trulli, 2004 Monaco Grand Prix. Now, Trulli gets a bit of a bad rap, the Trulli train and all that, but really that was because, or one of the reasons at least, was because he was so good at qualifying. And he did that several times at Monaco with really superb performances. And his pole position at the 2004 Monaco Grand Prix, which was 4/10 quicker than second place man Jenson Button, and his own teammate Fernando Alonso, is described by Nigel Roebuck at the end of the year as possibly being the highlight of the season. So really top work by Trulli. He was also outpacing Alonso in that first part of the season. Now, Alonso jumped up to second at the start, but Trulli had him covered for most of the afternoon. In fact, the biggest threat emerged in the middle of the race as Mark Schumacher in the inevitable F2004 Ferrari got clean air and started charging at them. Now, the race was still finely in the balance when there was a safety car, and Schumacher and Juan Pablo Montoya managed to crash into each other under the safety car under the tunnel. Just one of those crazy moments, each of them blaming the other. But anyway, it took them out, and it really meant that the race boiled down to Trulli holding off a charging Jenson Button in the BAR. Now, both of those drivers were, of course, trying to get their first World Championship Grand Prix win. Trulli held on despite the bar all over him at the end of the race, and I think it's really superb that Trulli is a race winner in F1 because some of his performances did deserve to get in there. Didn't keep him the drive, unfortunately, of course. Wasn't best of friends with Flavio Briatore, and out the door he went, but at least he'd got that one special day at Monaco. Number 3, Peter Gethin, the 1971 Italian Grand Prix. Now, if you're going to win one race, winning the fastest Formula 1 race on record and winning it by 0.01 of a second is probably a pretty good way to do it, and that's what Gethin did. He'd only just moved across to BRM from McLaren. He'd done one other race, and he qualified 11th. But it was one of those races where the quick guys fell out and it became a slipstreamer to the very end. Gethin was part of a 5-car train going on to the final lap, fighting for victory, and he out-fumbled Ronnie Peterson, Francois Sever, Mike Hailwood and Howden Ganley, and all 5 of those cars were covered by 0.61 of a second across the line. So a remarkable victory. He never won another race in the World Championship, although he did win the mixed F1 F5000 race at Brands Hatch in 1973 when all the quick F1 cars fell out. But really, it's that Monza race that stands out in Gethin's illustrious career. Number 2, Pastor Maldonado, 2012 Spanish Grand Prix. Is there another race that comes close to this one in F1 history as being the most random, most out of the blue victory of all time? In fact, as more time passes, it seemed more incredible that Maldonado, who did do quite a bit of crashing and didn't normally score many points, never mind podiums, was able to hold off across a full length of a Grand Prix, peak Fernando Alonso at Ferrari. Now, to be fair to Maldonado and Williams, they did qualify second and inherited pole position when Lewis Hamilton's McLaren was thrown out. So he did have pace that weekend, didn't make a great start, dropped behind Fernando Alonso. The two of them then pulled away from the rest, and Williams managed to jump Ferrari at the second round of pit stops. Now, at one stage, Alonso fell behind Maldonado and came back at him in the closing stages, but Maldonado held firm and, against form, didn't make any mistakes of any note and took Williams' 114th World Championship Grand Prix victory and his one and only success. Perhaps predictably, he never got close again. Number 1, Jean-Pierre Beltoire's 1972 Monaco Grand Prix. Now, it's fair to say that most of the greatest drives in F1 history have come from the greatest drivers. It makes sense. And the reason that Beltoire's is number 1 on this list is because I think this wet weather drive is among the best we've seen from any driver at any point in World Championship history, and yet it was his only Grand Prix victory. It wasn't quite as much out of the blue as Maldonado. He had shown his pace at previous races in the wet, but the BRM P160 by 1972 was past its best. Beltoir's qualifying 4th was a pretty remarkable achievement, but at the start he simply shot through into the lead. It was a really wet race and he just pulled clear of the field. Jackie Ickx, who was an established rainmaster, got his Ferrari up into 2nd place, and the expectation was that he'd start closing the BRM down, but it just didn't happen. Beltoir took the flag 38.2 seconds ahead of Ickx, and everyone else was lapped. His fastest lap was 0.6 seconds faster than anyone else, and this is a field that also included Jackie Stewart and Emerson Fittipaldi. So it really was one of those great day of days. Beltoir's never even scored a point for the rest of the season, but this is an outstanding drive and one that thoroughly deserves to top this list. If you want to know more about these races, please take a look at the article at the bottom of this video. If you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe, and do let us know if there are any other top 10s you'd like us to take a look at or like us to take on. And be sure to visit Motorsport TV for some more great motorsport videos.